Yeah, I mean, well, when we were starting the band, there was a lot of different things we really liked, you know, and we really didn't want to limit ourselves to just one thing. We'd kind of either been in bands or seen a lot of our friends have bands that were really just stuck, and we wanted to be able to, you know, because we kind of had a lot of foresight and figured, well, we're going to grow up eventually and want to write some crazier things, so let's draw upon everything that we love and just kind of jam it into one thing and see what happens. So like, you know, Revenge and the first record were more punk inspired. I'd say Revenge was more inspired by like stuff like Jawbreaker, maybe like 90s kind of rock, and then Parade was inspired by like largely classic rock, because that's kind of what we were into at the time. So I mean, that's, you know, we're also trying to be as like humble as possible. I mean, to us, Black Parade was, you know, I mean, to us it was the best record of that year. You know, that's how we felt about it when we were making it. We still feel that way about it. I think the only way to see if Black Parade stands up, it takes a lot of years to see. All the kids that listen to it now have to become rock critics, and then we'll see. But I mean, you know, like something like The Wall is like hugely ambitious. I don't know what it takes to make a record like that. Like that is, I mean, I think you got to like kind of take a sledgehammer to your life in a lot of ways, and I don't think anybody in this band's prepared to do that. That's like a heavily demonizing record. You know, it's a pretty brutal record. So I don't think we kind of, in the best possible way, have it in us to make a record like that, although I think The Wall's probably the greatest concept record ever made. Yeah, we were filming a show in Mexico, and literally, like, I'd say it was a good, you know, maybe 10 minutes before we went on, we just decided that it was going to be the last one, you know. We learned a lot. We felt like we'd done all we could as the Black Parade. We were tired of it. We really wanted it, especially because of what had gone on in the summer. We had really wanted to go back to just simply being My Chemical Romance, just really being a great rock band. Playing the Black Parade in order and playing as the Black Parade was very methodical, and really kind of boxed us in a bad way. And so, you know, it was fun while it lasted, but it definitely needed to end.
How did you come to that decision, just like all of a sudden in Mexico?
I think we'd put the uniforms on and started to get the makeup on and stuff, and we were hanging out backstage, and that making the record was one of the greatest experiences ever, but a lot had changed since making the record, and there was a lot of good memories, but there's also a lot of bad memories attached with kind of making that record, just mainly from the stress, you know, and the kind of personal stress that had come out of it. And like all the things we had to face making it, it just was like, you know, and we had faced a lot of illness and injury while touring on that record, especially while touring as the Black Parade. So I guess maybe I got a little superstitious about it, and I just wanted to end it. And I said to the guys, you know, like, I want this to be the last one, and they were very, very cool with that. I think we're all kind of relieved that it was the last one.
So part of it was just because you were on the road for so long, you were just kind of sick of doing it that way?
I'd say a small part of it was that, you know, like it caged us, but a bigger part was, I think, everything attached with being the Black Parade was something we wanted to kind of move on from. Well, we made Black Parade. By the time we finished it and tracked it properly in order, I always like to feel that particular character, who was created really so everybody could identify with the character. I mean, the character's practically nameless, and the one thing I figured people could identify with is that most likely everybody's going to eventually become a patient, and that's going to be the last time you are a patient. And I'm sure that the people in the hospital that see people come and go every day, all the nurses and the doctors, like, you know, you probably can't really remember one from the next, and when they pass, and you're just used to it. So you kind of lose your sense of identity once you become that kind of sick, and if you don't have any family around you, you're even have less of an identity. But I like to think at the end of that record, like, the character gets a second chance, which you rarely get, you know. I'd like to think whether or not the character dies, he does in fact choose to live, whether or not he has a week left or whatever. He seemed like, you know, concept-wise, a very real thing. People seem to identify with it. Coming out on the gurney in the hospital gown, things like that. That part felt more like really great death glam, though. It just felt like glam, you know. It just felt like Alice Cooper up there, and that was awesome. That was some of the most exhilarating stuff, was doing that for like the first week or a month, and watching that kind of evolve. And like, I mean, it was like true theater, and it was. So we got our fix from that on that.
Okay. Well, I was reading a New York Times story that said that the patient is the American everyman, recast as a sick, violent, scarred wreck. Is that true? I mean,
I'd say it's pretty close. I mean, it's definitely an everyman. I don't think largely American, though. I think we had sought out to make a very universal record, and I think, you know, obviously just the fact that we're here today proves that we did. And thank you. Cool. So yeah, we sought to make a very universal record, and we've never really. It's interesting. We don't really think of ourselves as a New Jersey band, and we also don't really think of ourselves as an American band in a lot of ways. We're proud of it, you know. It's like cool. Like we kind of, you know, people's impressions of Americans. We kind of feel sometimes that people think we're like cowboys or something. So that's kind of exciting. But we felt more, you know, of a band of the world, or like somewhere like the UK. We felt like more like a British rock band than anything.
You did.
American positivity. I don't know. I mean, we are really positive, you know. I think we have to be with how dark we are, or else we'd be like depressed all the time. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a weird thing. I've never heard that term or anything. I think a lot of American bands do go over there with a lot of baggage. I don't think we ever went over there with any kind of baggage. Mm-hmm. You know, I think we just went there with maybe something to prove to ourselves. You know, and we cared very little for other people's opinions. Like, we were never interested in making any friends either, which was always exciting. I was there. I was in Hoboken, and it was right across.
Were you living in Hoboken?
No, I was living at my parents'.
Okay.
But I was taking the commuter train in. I didn't see any of the planes hit. I saw the buildings go down, though.
You did?
Yes.
From where?
From, I'd say fairly close. I mean, the train that runs from Hoboken runs to the World Trade Center. So it was. There's two trains. One runs on 33rd. One runs to World Trade Center.
Right. Yeah.
So it's right there. Like, it's a straight shot from Hoboken Terminal. So you're literally. I mean, I'd say so across the river, the smallest part of the river. So you're right in front of those buildings. It was like. I mean, it was like being in a science fiction film, you know, or some kind of like a disaster film. It was exactly that kind of feeling. You didn't believe it. Like, it felt like you were in Independence Day or something. Like, it made no sense. Your brain couldn't process it. And for me, it was a little different. I'm very empathetic, and I'm kind of a conduit emotionally and stuff. So I pick up a lot of stuff in that way. And there was like about 300-400 people around me. I was right at the edge. A lot of people were maybe a little too scared to get right to the edge of the railing. All these people behind me, though, they all had friends and family in those buildings. I didn't. So when that first building went, like, it was like an A-bomb went off of like just this emotion, and it was like, it made you nauseous. You know, I was more upset for the people around me than for myself. You know, I was just. I think one of the first thoughts that went in my head when it went down is, what does this mean? Like, what does this mean for the world? Like, how's this going to change everything? So yeah, that was pretty crazy. It was like total piece of fiction. It was like, you know, you couldn't even believe it was happening.
And what did you end up doing that day?
They were sending people back home on the trains for free. They were basically just shuttling people out, and I ended up walking home that day, and I got off the train and walked home, and my mom was really excited to see that I was still alive and that I was able to also get home so quickly. But the train ride back was very interesting because you were surrounded by people that were like businessmen and people just a different age and a different class than me. They were all like kind of like entrepreneurs or something, and they were all just talking about. I heard people like calling people just talking about having families now and getting married and just like all these things, and then talking about the opposite of that. You'd see differing opinions. Like the guy next to you would be saying how he didn't want to raise a kid in a world like this, and another guy would be saying how he wants to get married and start a family now and stop running around. So that was pretty interesting. I'm a total people watcher, so I was observing a lot that day.
And how did that lead to the creation of the band?
One of the other things I thought about when that first building went down was a big thing that went through my head was, everything's kind of pointless that you're doing right now. I was involved in commercial art in New York, trying to pitch a show to Cartoon Network that was extremely frustrating because I was dealing with a company that had optioned the cartoon show that didn't quite get it, and I think they were more interested in turning it into toys or pillowcases and shit like that, and it was really disheartening. And that was my first ever taste of creating something and seeing it take off a little bit, and it didn't feel good. And at that moment I was like, oh, this doesn't mean anything. This is all garbage. Like, this is all bullshit. And I need to do something that actually means something, or my life's gonna mean nothing. Just like this cartoon means nothing. Like, it's all going to mean nothing if I don't do something. And it doesn't mean like go out there and save the world, because you can't, obviously. But it means, go out there and make some kind of difference, or say something that has some kind of value to it, connect with another human being, So that was it. And I think it took a couple weeks tops, and then we were jamming, and then a month later we had Mikey, and then a month after that we were playing, and then a month after that we were recording, and then touring. So it was just like every month was a giant thing happening for us,
So do you think have you found like that meaning through this?
I absolutely. I feel like I've accomplished a lot. My personal goals with the band, and yeah, I think I did. We created something special together, and I wanted to be part of the team. I didn't just want to be it myself. I think we created something very special together. I think it means something. It meant something when it started. It said what it kind of had to say, and so that's an interesting position to be in, because I don't necessarily think the next album we make, I don't necessarily know that it needs to say something. I think we're kind of finished in that regard. So it's going to be interesting to see what we do next, because I guess, quote unquote, the mission or the goal or whatever it was, I feel very complete about that. Like, the feeling that I got growing up in that area, did you ever kind of have these kind of moments where you're in an environment, even in high school or anywhere else, where you realize, like, wow, I'm completely built differently than every single person I'm around? Like, from the kids bullying, like, I'd watch kids bully other kids, and it was all about, like, force and aggression and dominance. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, why am I not like that? Like, why am I not prone to conflict like all these other kids I'm around? Why am I not prone to violence? Why am I not prone to act out? Why does violence, why do I realize it's so wrong? And why does it make me nauseous? And, why do I want to create things instead of destroy them? And all I saw around me was other kids that just wanted to destroy something. If some kid got a new bike, another kid wanted to take it and jump it and destroy it. And I never understood that. The same thing. That's what's interesting. We'll play something like Reading Festival, and I'll get hit with like a golf ball or a bottle of piss, and I'll be like, wow, why am I not like that guy? What makes me different like that? Why do I want to just create something really special and kind of just like basically give it to the world? And there's other people that are just so they just hate themselves so much that they want to act out in aggression against something, you know, something that stands for really just, and that's the kind of response this band is supposed to get. Like, it was a wake-up call in the regard that we hadn't had that response in a long time, but when the band started, we would get physical threats, you know, because it was flamboyant and it was unapologetic. That's what this band is. So I guess it had been a long time, and a lot of award shows later and a lot of magazine interviews later where it was like, wow, I forgot what that felt like to be the outcast, to represent every kid in the crowd that didn't really fit in at all, you know.
So what did that feel like then, getting hit with getting bottled? What did that feel like?
It was exhilarating and extremely challenging, you know. There's nothing like that to humble you more or let you know that there's still something to fight for, or that the world wants what it wants, you know. Like, you can't change the world. You can't fight the world. The world is always going to win based off what it wants, you know. But it also makes you realize that sometimes there's just like a majority out there, or a minority out there that's extremely aggressive, when in fact you're playing for the majority, which is A, really enjoying what you're doing, and B, very peaceful people. So, but it's interesting. I think the polarizing element to the band is really exhilarating. It's very exciting. You never get bored.
So when you got like hit with the ball, you felt like exhilarated? Yeah,
I mean that actually ended up. I think when all is said and done, I mean, we'll have, you know, we've had shows since that I feel were like maybe my personal best, or I said something extra witty that day or extra important. But I think when all is said and done, people will look at that very specific show and say that was the most important show of this band's career, because they got up there facing a tremendous amount of opposition and won an entire crowd over, and did it with every single camera on them and everybody facing them. And so I think that's why it's important, because it really sums up the band in one 40-minute set, you know. It was not easy. It was like a volley at first, and then just stopped, and there was cheering, and there was excitement, and there was positivity, like, you know, like a current through the audience. And it was really amazing. It's amazing to watch some of the footage that BBC captured of it. It's pretty awesome. That was one of the coolest things. Like, I watched the documentary about the Ramones, and they had a lot of really great things in it, but the one thing I identified the most with that documentary was, I believe it was, I can't remember if it was Johnny or Dee Dee, but somebody was talking about how they were like a gang, and they had this kind of feeling like they would show up to their shows, they wouldn't hang out with anybody else, they stuck to themselves, they had like a chip on their shoulder, and they were there to prove something. And I identify with that a great deal, because that's very much how it was in the beginning. Like, we were there for us, first and foremost. Like, we went up there, we did our thing, we didn't say our band name, we didn't tell people what songs were called, really. We just went and did it, and then we picked up our stuff and we left. We didn't hang out to really meet people or to get compliments or anything like that. We weren't interested in them, you know. So it was kind of a therapy for me at first because of 9/11, and then the band because in some way we had all in our own lives been the people that did not fit in, or were built like other people, like we were talking about before, just not prone to violence, just not survivors in that regard, survivors in a different way, you know. And so then when we go to these shows, we started meeting these kids just like us, you know. And then it was like a circular, almost like a group therapy session. That was really exciting. We're just all working it out, you know, like, since we're very, very non-violent people in our everyday lives, our fans were very much the same. They're very much like shy, quiet loners. You know, you had to have some place you needed to kind of get that out, and our shows were the place to do it. And it was like the one place you can go where, you know, one of the things that's like a common misconception about the punk rock scene is that what's cool about it is that you can go and fit in because it's punk rock, but in actuality you can't. And I don't think enough people say this about it. Like, it was the same as being in high school with the jocks. I would go to punk clubs and get shoved by skinheads because I wasn't like them, which was just like getting shoved by jocks for wearing a Ramones shirt. I mean, it's the same exact thing. And so I had never wanted to be a part of that either. I never wanted any of us to be a part of that. You know, I don't have like fond memories of going to a punk club and seeing a band. I have fond memories of going to like a VFW hall and seeing a band, because that was self-created by the kids that didn't fit in the punk clubs, and that's where the real memories kind of come from. Those shows that we just created ourselves. You know, we had, and you know, and maybe it's not so much failure as much as it is just like not following through or just giving up. I think I was more of a person that gave up rather than a failure. I didn't have, you know, what it took at the time, because I was very prone to get discouraged very quickly and stop doing what I was doing. With this band, I never wanted to give up, you know. But yeah, I think it takes a great deal of living. You have to live, you have to have experience. That's why it's probably going to take us a while to make a record, because we have to go have living experience, which we haven't had. We've had a different kind of experience, so we have to go find what it is we want to say now, or what we want to even play. But that's going to take a while. I see our first kind of lengthy break. I mean, by lengthy for this band probably only means about 6 months, if that. And you know, the way we are is we're the kind of guys where we get home anyway, and within you know, if we know we're not touring, within a couple weeks we start calling each other and talking about what each of us are doing, or oh, I've got this riff I'm working on, stuff like that. And so it'll probably happen sooner than later, but I mean, I know we're going to commit to trying to have at least 6 months off before we even talk about making something else. And then at that point, you know, hopefully we'll have done enough living to make something. It's all your own perspective. That's how you escape it. You know, it's if you take it home with you. You know, you can escape it very easily. Sure, I mean, you're going to go to like a record store somewhere, or a mall, or a supermarket, and somebody's going to spot you, but, you know. But it's all in your own perception of, you know, like I don't. Nobody in this band takes it home with them at all. They don't like live this every day. I think because I don't like any kind of term that to me seems like seems lazy, or kind of an easy term for something that's not easy to describe. I also think I think it's frustrating because we were so the opposite of an emo band that we couldn't get booked playing shows, because there was this kind of budding emo scene, and we were touring with Christian metal bands. Those are the only bands that would, you know, there's very few kinds of, or other bands that were very off-kilter as well. Those are the only kind of bands that would take us out. So it was frustrating, and like we were almost created in opposition to that. We were like the answer to what was happening. We were the complete opposite. So we'd get booked on a bill in like a hall or something, and we were the odd man out. There was only about 2 kids there to see us, and they were wearing black just like us. And that's the way it was. Like, we didn't fit in with this kind of dungaree, moppy hair, like, you know, whining about girl type nonsense that's still kind of happening. And also what's frustrating about it, yeah, like I just wish people would realize, like, what happens with My Chemical Romance is completely exclusive from any other kind of genre of music. Like, what we have is extremely special, and we worked very hard to get it there. So it's an insulting term in the fact that we're lumped in with bands that didn't create that. And they didn't put in the work, and they didn't slug it out in the van to create something that was unique for us and our fans. It's just for us and the fans. It's not for anybody else. If the fan base is huge, that's awesome. If it's small, same thing, you know? We just wanted an environment where we felt safe, they felt safe, and we had a great time. And so it's completely exclusive. Like, the whole phenomena of the band has nothing to do with what people are calling emo. And I think people try to often say, oh, well, this is like this, or this is like this. It's not at all like that. It wasn't founded on the same things. The blood that went into it was different, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't have the spit, it doesn't have the grit of it. It's not unique. It's just pop punk all over again, with really, like, now it's pop punk with eyeliner. That's all it is. It's boring. It's, you know, really redundant. So I think that's why it's frustrating, and you know, because it was difficult for us starting out, because we were nothing like that.